Right. Awesome. Well, thanks again for coming, you guys. I am Michelle Magram. I'm the Sales and Marketing Manager here at Education Associates, and we're super excited to have you all here for this town hall meeting. And I just wanted to kind of go around and introduce everybody that we have and then turn it over to them. So I'll be very brief. I just wanted to introduce myself. And we also have Paula Love here. She is the funding doctor, Dr. Love, and she's here to talk about all things funding, answer any questions that you guys have. We have Al Dodge, who is your Education Associates local Georgia representative. Shelly Maurer, who is our Executive Vice President here at Education Associates. And last but certainly not least, Erin Shetty. Oh, wait, Schutte, I'm sorry. Is Schutte? Yeah. I'm sorry, Erin. She is a teacher with Towns County High School, and she's going to give us her perspective on things. So without further ado, I am going to pass it over to Al. I'm going to go ahead and turn off my camera, and I'm going to be here to answer any questions in the chat box or anything in the Q&A for you guys. So I'll be kind of behind the scenes. So Al, I'm passing it on to you.
Well, greetings and hello, friends. Thank you for joining us. As Michelle had mentioned, I'm Al Dodge. I've got a company called Dodge Learning Resources in Tyrone, Georgia, and I've been representing Education Associates now for about 3 years. I've been excited about what I've seen in the way the education system in Georgia has embraced CTAE, and especially for special ed students. And so our position representing pre-made kits, curriculum kits for those purposes has been a real blessing, and sales and enthusiasm in our market area in the state of Georgia have really begun to take off. So I'm going to be introducing Paula Love, who is with RFPmatch.com. And she's going to tell us about the federal programs that offer monies that are eligible for Georgia's school districts and individual schools to expand their offerings for these kinds of curricula. Then after that, I'm going to be introducing Shelly Maurer, who is going to talk about how Georgia programs specifically can interact with the applications for federal money in the state of Georgia. And then I'll be talking with you further on and with Erin, who will be joining us from Towns County, or who is on the call already. So I guess the first question I'm going to ask is directed at Paula. Can you give us an overview of the amount of funding for recovery funds in Georgia?
And everybody on this call, thank you so much for that great question, because this is an amazing time, folks. In all the years that I've been in funding, it's been almost 5 decades now of working with funding and funding opportunities from a teacher, from a principal, from state level to working at the federal level. It has just been an unparalleled investment in those opportunities that are out there. And I'm so happy to be able to talk to you specifically around Georgia and the opportunities that exist there. So before we actually dive into the amounts, the title of this talk, that this town hall today, was to demystify the ESSER funds. So when I think about demystify, I think making something clear, making something that sometimes is difficult to understand as clear as we possibly can. So on the screen right now, you see some acronyms, and oh my gosh, in education, I don't need to tell you all, we just love those acronyms, don't we? So I just want to take the first 2. We're going to cover the others during the presentation, but I want to take the first 2 to demystify for you. So the ESSER stands for Elementary Secondary School Emergency Relief Funds. And next to it is ESSA, Every Student Succeeds Act. The ESSA is the legislation that guides us right now for all of our other title programs such as Perkins and Title I. But we need to make sure when we're talking about ESSER, we're referring to that funding stream that is around ESSER funds in the legislation. So let's dive in right now and take a look at those recovery funds. And you're seeing on the screen the amazing opportunity that's presented in Georgia. So back in March 2020, there was an act. It was called the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security, and we know it as CARES Act. But the funding stream that came down was ESSER, and we often refer to this as ESSER 1. So in the CARES Act across the nation, there was $13.2 billion. And as you can see, Georgia received a great amount of a little over 457 million. How exciting. I know back then when that first group of money came out in recovery, we were all kind of excited about it. But then right on the heels of that, at the end of December 2020, we had something called the Coronavirus Response and Relief Supplemental Appropriations Act, or what we know as CRRSA, another one of those acronyms again to demystify. And under that act, we received some funding again called ESSER 2. Now look at the amount. The amount that we received, especially you received in Georgia, a little over almost $1.9 billion, was 4 times the amount that we received in ESSER 1. An amazing opportunity, just an amazing time there. Across the nation, there was 54.3 billion. But then in March of 2021, the American Rescue Plan, or what we call ARP. And in Georgia, you refer to this as ESSER 3. In other states, you might see it, and even on the federal guidelines, you'll see it as ARP ESSER. But in Georgia, you call it ESSER 3. And notice that you got almost over 4.2 billion, twice the amount that we received in round 2. So just an amazing time, but keep in mind that ESSER is the funding stream around those funds. So in addition to the ESSER money, we also received another appropriation or another set of funds under the American Rescue Plan. Now under ESSA, we all know that we get a piece of fund called IDEA, Individuals with Disability Education Act. It's our special needs students. We get a regular piece of money that comes down. But under ARP, an additional piece of money came out as well. Now remember, ESSER was a separate new funding stream, but this funding came down under IDEA. And you notice that out of the entire $3 billion, Georgia again was a recipient of additional funds under this as well. Now, remember again, these totals are a supplement to our regular IDEA funds.
Oh, thank you for that information, Paula. I really appreciate it. I have been privy to watching the Georgia State Department of Education's program on the use of these funds and the implementation of the ESSER program in Georgia. And also, I've been privy to another presentation by the Georgia Partnership for Excellence in Education. Recently, both of those presentations included phrases that said they need help in getting the word out to schools and school districts in the state of Georgia that these funds are available, that their applications need to be processed, and they really want help generating more excitement from schools to employ the federal funds in the state of Georgia. I noticed we moved from what are the allowable uses of these funds in our schools? Paula, can you give us some more insight?
Yes, and Al, thank you so much for making that statement, because I think it's so important that we not only look at the bulk of money that's out there, folks, but we also think about what a difference this is going to make for our students. The beauty about the ESSER funds that we see right now, my screen is just jumping around, so bear with me just a little bit. The beauty around the ESSER funds are their flexibility that we have in their uses and everything. And folks, actually, the recent guidance from the Department of Education provided us some guidelines around 2020 allowable uses for the ESSER dollars. And it didn't matter, it doesn't matter if it's ESSER 1 or ESSER 2 or ESSER 3, all of those allowable uses allow us to think about the expenditures for those funds. And again, I emphasize the word flexibility, and your superintendent Woods also noted that flexibility is so important for you. So one of the things that your state in those 20 allowable uses really focused in on was the urgency. Get those funds out there because you need those dollars right now during this pandemic to help our students and create great learning environments for our students. But at the same time, we as educators need to keep in mind that these funds, even though there's 20 allowable uses, their flexibility is broad like we've never seen before in the history of what we're doing. We also need to keep in mind, like your superintendent mentioned, about the equity, especially our students that have great needs, such as our struggling students and our students with disabilities. And finally, one of the things that we need to keep in mind is the whole area of transparency. And even though they're flexible funds, we still need to be accountable for how we're using those funds to create the learning environments for our students. As we go through this town hall today, I encourage you to ask some additional questions of our panelists. Ask them about the urgency and the flexibility and how they're meeting equity and how they're helping you be accountable for ensuring those funds are used properly. And you're going to hear it not only from our sponsor, but you're going to hear it from a teacher talking about that too as well today. So let's travel down some of the allowable uses of funds. You know, when I started looking at a lot of work that you have out there in Georgia, and I have privilege of seeing states all across this nation, I was really taken back by your, what I call the roadmap that we can travel down on these allowable uses of funds. I thought this was a great visual that your Department of Education put out around these funds. So we're going to travel on this roadmap a little bit, but we're only going to take a few stops right now. And you can take lots of stops on it because you're seeing all those dots, but we're going to take a few stops that I think are important for our conversation as we talk in this town hall today. So the first stop, the first one on the roadmap, is at-risk populations. And if you noticed in there, again, jumping out at you are those students with disabilities and low-income students. So all of those at-risk populations are so critical for us to consider as we're traveling the uses of the funds. But as we move on down, let's take another stop at supplemental learning. And in the supplemental learning, we're seeing that extended learning, summer school, after school. We all know how critical that is, especially during this time when our students are sometimes in hybrid learning models and different kinds of modes of instruction. We need to think about continuing education and supplementing what we have. Let's take another stop at the end there where it talks about career, technical, and agricultural education. I was so excited to see that when I looked at Georgia's because they added the word agricultural in there too, which is a great opportunity for you to think about as you move through those kinds of funds. And then if we go over to the other side, one of the areas that we often hear, especially under the American Rescue Plan, but we heard it all along, was really paying attention to the mental and social emotional health of our students. So we need to keep that in perspective as well. Again, 20 uses for those funds. I just highlighted a few that we need to be mindful of. But now let's dive in a little bit more for where you are in Georgia. So in looking at all the fund uses in Georgia, especially during the CARES Act, you'll see that the spread of funding, and you're seeing it from the top graph there, kind of went in different areas where they used a lot of the money. Notice a bulk of the money went to the core staff and services and facilities and equipment. And that seems logical because that was our first time when we were in the pandemic. But you're also seeing the emphasis for at-risk populations that and supplemental learning that we also talked about. Now, if we dive in again a little bit deeper and we go down to the bottom screen, you're going to see if we break out those at-risk populations where a lot of resources were placed. So what you're seeing is the bulk of a lot of those resources went to, of course, our special needs students as well as those low income. That's not to discount the other targeted populations there, but this just kind of shows how important we need to be and how sensitive we need to be when we're looking at those other opportunities as well. So one of the things that happened during this, and I love this slide, this actually came from your Department of Education, and I just love this slide, because what it represents when we saw those ESSER funds come out is a shift in where we are, a shift in our thinking and a shift in our response. So we look at ESSER 1 and ESSER 2, we were all about how do we do this? How do we get this in? How do we get now, when with the American Rescue Plan, we've kind of moved beyond that. And now we're thinking about really the implementation of those funds, and not only to show you where the money is right now, the how-to around the money, but this town hall is going to show you how we look at this from an implementation of evidence-based solutions. So keep that in mind as we go along.
Sorry, I've got a fire alarm going on right now. It's just a just a bad moment.
Well, Al, do you want me to pick up?
Just shed a little bit more light on how those funds are supposed to be used in Georgia.
Yeah, I will. My screen is jumping around here, so I apologize. It's like having it's like your fire alarm right now. It's just kind of jumping. Maybe I'm on the mouse or something. So we're having all kinds of excitement today. Well, if we look at all of those ESSER funds and we really give them a breakdown for where we are right now, especially in Georgia, you're seeing most of the funds went out to local school districts. You're also seeing a portion of them did stay at the state level. Now, let me remind you of something on this slide, because this slide shows a total of around 4.2 billion that I had on the earlier slide. But you know what? You guys in Georgia were very fortunate because there was a recalculation and you got an additional $3 million. So beyond the funds that you see there, because of the miscalculation, the Department of Education actually gave your state another $3 million. So think about that, because we have more money than what we talked about before in terms of that. But you're also seeing where we are in terms of the ARP IDEA, that's that second supplement that came down. Notice the words accountability, transparency, and effective use of funds. They kind of go along with what we talked about earlier from your superintendent. And you know, when the states, when the American Rescue Plan came in, the states had to do a plan for what they were going to do and how they were going to roll these out. So in Georgia, your plan actually came out and was approved on July 21st, 2022. You can have access to the entire plan, but here on this slide, is again some highlights from that plan. I'm going to just emphasize a few, such as again that increasing summer and after school learning, to look at providing that mental health services, to think about those instructional supports and those supports and therapeutic services, especially for our students with disabilities. So again, you're seeing the emphasis in the highlights of the plans of the things that we talked about, where we emphasized some of the allowable uses of funds. In Georgia, your plan also had 3 major priorities. One of them had to do with accelerated learning, another one with personalized learning, and the third area was promoting more opportunity for this as we enter into this new century or standard of learning. So consider these 3 priorities, listen when the other speakers talk, because they're going to be focusing on these priorities as well.
So I know Georgia has already spent some of the money that was originally dished out to the state and the school districts. Can you give us an idea of the timeline for spending the rest of the money?
Sure, Al. And you know, that's the big question everybody wants to know. I sometimes say, if I had a crystal ball, I wish I could give you all a glimpse into this. But again, your state has done a pretty good job with understanding, especially how these monies are coming down with this 3rd round. So when the monies originally came out, 2/3 of the money actually went to your local school districts. And, you know, and then the state held back on about 1/3 as they were looking at their state plan and getting approval on that plan. But look what happened most recently at the end of August at your August state board meeting. The remainder 1/3 money was now available to you as local school districts. And when we get into kind of the town hall, I would be really interested if any of you are in the local school districts, if you're starting to see that money starting to drip down right now. I hear various different scenarios across the nation when I'm talking to folks, but your state was pretty, again, went back to that urgency and access that your superintendent said, and it's trying to roll that money as quick to you as possible so that you can actually use those resources.
Who are the folks who are responsible for managing the money in Georgia? Who should the districts contact?
You know, Al, that is so important. And sometimes coming from a state level person, and especially since these are new funds, they're not often in our directory that we might have had before, or people in our wheelhouse that we thought about. But your state has a very robust team, a great opportunity for you to reach out to different individuals right now. And on this slide, you might even want to save this in the future, just so that you know, if you have questions within your state about allowable uses, about the timelines coming down, about some other issues that you may have, especially like IDEA, these are the people that you can reach out to. And again, you have a great team. I've listened to a lot of the information that they presented. So you're very fortunate to be in Georgia right now and to have this robust kind of team behind you.
So the fire alarm just stopped ringing. I'm not sure I can hear other things yet, but I'm going to switch over to Shelley Maurer. And Shelley, can you give us an idea of what Education Associates has in the way of materials and pedagogy and professional learning that may support or be qualified for using these federal funds?
Right. Yes, and thanks, Al. You know, at Education Associates, we provide a very comprehensive set of programs and resources to address many of those activities that can be addressed with the COVID funds. What I'd like to do today is just provide a brief overview about our programs and show the alignment with some of the funding initiatives and Georgia priorities. I want to start with our project discovery. Now, these are our hands-on instructional materials. we're going to instruct students with some really dynamic, exciting opportunities to learn about their career passions and interests, to gain entry-level skills and be better informed to make better career decisions. So we have 4 series in our Project Discovery program, and I want to talk just a minute about those and the levels and breakouts on those. Our Career Awareness is our elementary set of programs. Now they're for K-5. They're an introduction to careers and career cluster areas. Our Career Exploration is primarily in our middle school and high school grades, where students are going to explore careers, hands-on activities with our kids. They're going to learn about careers and their interests and gain some entry-level skills. Now, our adapted curriculum is very unique in that this is hands-on again, but it's for our students with the most challenges. And they will get to explore careers hands-on as well. Very exciting program, very dynamic for our students with the most challenges. Our job skills training are for our higher grade levels. We typically see that in our higher grades in high school, even into our 17 through 21 programs. We have our Achieve Life Skills, which is our instruction in some key job prep and employability skills. You know, Paula, we were also talking about our initiatives with self-confidence, social skills, all of those skills, independent living. We hear that verbiage, of course, in the funding, and we have materials that will address that as well. All right, let's see if my slides will do any better than yours, Paula. They are acting very crazy today. And it's not, Paula, you may have to move them for me. It is not, they are not moving for me.
There we go.
There we go. Thank you. Thank you. One of the things I do want to talk about, we have developed alignments to the funding initiatives. And we know that the ARP funds may be used for any of our allowable uses under many of our initiatives. And we have developed, as you'll see on the screen, we have developed alignments to a lot of those initiatives, showing how our programs break out and correlate to those and how we support that. So let me give you just a little flavor for that. We know we can use those COVID monies with IDEA, any allowable uses with that. You know, we're all about facilitating our transition opportunities for our students with special needs. And because our program, of course, provides career exploration and life skills for students to improve their student outcomes, we're very positive and very focused on that. Our programs have been endorsed by CASE, which is the Council of Administrators for Special Education, as well as the U.S. Department of Education. We also support Perkins, our CTE monies, Paula, you know, you were addressing just a minute ago. We know in CTE, we're looking at improving our academic and our career and technical education. And our programs are very unique in that we provide a dual correlation. We provide correlations with academics, correlations to standards, and we have career and technical education tasks all embedded in our curriculum. So students are going to learn about industries and careers, and they're going to gain entry-level skills, and they're going to be doing the academics needed to do those skills. So we provide a very comprehensive dual correlation there. You know, when we're talking about Title I, we're looking at addressing, once again, core content and facilitating transition. We really want to talk about, will the programs increase capacity for improved student results, improved student outcomes? And we do have a lot of research and data on how our programs do just that, how we improve student outcomes, both with our proven research-based program. We have student outcomes that we can provide. We correlate to the academic standards that I've just mentioned, and alternate assessments as well. When we're talking about our Title IV programs, you know, we're looking in a large part about helping our learners be job and life ready. And we really do provide engaging dynamic programs. When we're looking, for instance, at our 21st century community learning centers, you know, we want to increase our academic enrichment and we want to motivate and engage our learners. And our programs are all about that. So we provide and promote 21st century to a very strong degree. And of course, adult basic and literacy ed, we want to help learners develop real job and life skills. And of course, we have employability skills and life skills embedded in our curriculum. So that's a very strong focus. And Paula, you know, when you had your slide up, you were showing the addressing the priorities of Georgia as well as ARP and how well they complement each other. But, you know, we're talking about addressing learning loss, recovery, and after school and summer programs being a priority. And I would like to just invite people to come to our website, because a few months ago on one of our Wednesday webinars, we actually had the School District of Philadelphia who talked about their summer program and how our project discovery materials are a foundation and strong basis of their summer programs and the great successes they've had there. So we do have a resource there that they can watch. Go to our website and watch that webinar and learn even more about summer programs with that. We'll go to the next slide, Paula, if our slides are cooperating with us today. I do want to give really just a good flavor for evidence-based practices, because we know in our funding language, we're talking very much about strong support for evidence-based practices in the curriculum and programs that people look at when using these funds. And we have many evidence-based practices built into our programs. Well, of course, we're all about hands-on learning. We're about students using real tools of the trade to do actual tasks that workers in the field would do. You can see some of our students on the slide now doing our greenhouse kit, or grocery clerking, or retail, or cleaning. We also have video modeling, visual schedules, as you can see, systematic instruction, a lot of social communication supports. And these are all evidence-based practices that research has shown to be proven effective and improve student outcomes, and they're all embedded in our curriculum. And our programs are so fun and engaging for students that, you know, when we talk about recovery, we want to engage our students and our educators. We know that's a key part of recovery, and so we're very excited about the way that our students and teachers respond to our curriculum, the results that we see. On the next slide, Paul, I just have a few things that I want to make sure that we talk about today as far as our differentiated instruction. You know, Al, I know we have talked about the fact that because we provide different learning modalities in our curriculum, whether it's hands-on, visual, auditory, you know, we address a broad range of learners, and we have different functional levels of our curriculum. So that's all very important, because, you know, as we're looking at Georgia priorities, we're talking about personalized supports for students and educators. And that's what we're all about. So we support that wholeheartedly, and our curriculum for teachers and for the students really hits that nail right on the head.
Can you tell us about different levels of literacy?
Yes, yes. And, you know, exactly, Al, because with the auditory component that we have of our curriculum for our English language learners, for our emerging learners and readers, you know, we support them. We have the video modeling for our students with autism that need those supports. We have hands-on, you know, we have so many different ways. And that really is another bullet point, our universal design for learning, of how we engage learners, but we also meet them where they are. And that's a really key point in looking at curriculum. I've talked a little about, of course, already our correlations to state standards and extended content standards, how we correlate to those. And I want to mention just a little that we also provide professional development. We have a series of nationally certified trainers around the country that go and provide support for implementing our curriculum. And then when you look at supporting Georgia, as Paula was showing their priorities, as far as personalized supports, accelerating learning, and promoting opportunity, you know, expanding access to all learners. And that's what we are all about with the depth of the curriculum that we have. I also want to mention that we support the Georgia Program of Education as far as with career exploration, career awareness at levels, the personal, interpersonal, and social skills, the career cluster pathways. We support that program of education as well. And then one last thing on the next slide, Paula, I want to just briefly mention that during these challenging times, this past year, year and a half, we have worked with our trainers and customers on developing remote learning guidance documents to help educators with using our curriculum, not only in class, but in a distance learning situation or even a hybrid process. And we have developed guidance documents on how to do that with a lot of tips and resources for how to continue to keep career exploration and transition going through these challenging times. So I did want to just briefly mention that we have those resources to support our educators as well. That's an overview, pretty quick overview, Al, but I'll turn it back to you if you have any other thoughts on content and programs that you might want to add before we turn it over to Aaron.
I don't think I need to add anything more, especially after having talked with Erin about what she can contribute in terms of her own from her own experiences. So Erin, can I start you off with a couple of questions that have to do with how and why did you get started using the curriculum kits from Education Associates?
Sure. Thank you for having me here today. But yeah, years ago, I'm talking probably 5 to 6 years ago, I had a student in a CTA classroom on the health occupations pathway with cognitive disabilities. And I was looking for a way to support her in that regular ed setting and be able to adapt her materials that still aligned with the CTAE curriculum for that pathway, and started doing some research, came across your caregiver kit, which is one of those project discovery kits that's very hands-on and interactive, and it worked perfectly with her. I was impressed with the materials, the easy use of the programs, and started looking at your other kits and shared this with my special education director. And she was all on board for me to continue to add to our program. And so since then, I'm up to 6 kits with you guys. And now I use them not only to support my students out in those CTAE classrooms, but in today's time, because of COVID and not being able to go out in the community like I used to, I'm now using these kits to supplement that community-based vocational instruction within my classroom.
So are your students using this in a remote learning mode?
I have not had any students in a remote learning mode at this point in time. They've all been within the classroom. I do see that it would be easy to do remotely. The materials could be easily, given to the students at home, or your materials are ones that are, they're common materials that could be obtained, even if the school couldn't get it directly to the student. For example, your housekeeping kit, it has a lot of the common everyday household cleaning products and tools that you would use that a student that was remote learning could have access to at home. So they're very compatible to do either in class, or they could be used remotely.
How about assessment? I know that formative assessment in special education is paramount. And so how are the assessment designs in the Education Associates kits helpful to you, or how are they useful?
Well, of course, our students, in their IEP may have IEP goals related to vocation or independent living or daily living, their transition plans. So a lot of times your kits, I've used them to go hand in hand with transition plans and the activities around their transition goals. I can, I have the data and their you have an assessment chart that comes with each kit. I can put that in their transition portfolio, this data, their student work samples, all of that can be shared at their IEP meetings, and, show their progress on their IEP goals.
Hey, Aaron, I know that you don't teach just career and life skills curriculum in your school. How do these kits fit with the other things that you teach your special ed students?
Well, me being a self-contained teacher, I do all academics, and I also, do the CBVI. But, these kits incorporate, the PowerPoint, so there's reading involved. Some of the kits, I believe it was the caregiver kit and the animal care kit involve math. There's math in there. Definitely science is incorporated into a lot of these. So, you can touch on all the subject areas in one way. Economics for social studies is definitely incorporated in there. So they can, be justified to cover all your academic areas if need be.
So we're teaching across subjects
Yes.
with these kits and other materials. What about parents? How do they react with the designs that you're using for teaching, learning, and assessing with their children?
The parents, especially as I stated before, not being able to go out in the community, were impressed, especially like when they came to open house. I showed them all of these kits and explained, since we were not going to be able to go out, that I would be incorporating these into our community-based instruction time. And they were happy to see that we had realistic hands-on learning that was going to be going on, even though we couldn't go out in the community. I, so to speak, brought the community into the classroom this way.
I know that Towns County is not the largest school district in Georgia, but is there a way to describe how your special ed students are responding to your, well, let's say relatively new aspects of instruction by describing any changes in their graduation rates or dropouts or even test scores?
Well, we do have a high student success rate here. Again, we are a small system, but that's one area that with the state that we've always passed. We have a good graduation rate. Learning these skills for especially my students with cognitive disabilities, I try to get the kits that are related to maybe job sites and areas that we have here within our community. For example, we have a lot of restaurants, we have a lot of resorts, we have animal care facilities. So I try to find kits that we can utilize in the classroom. They can develop those skills and they can, put this on their resumes when they go out to find a job. They can say, I have experience working in these various areas that match the type of jobs that are within our community.
So how would you describe your teaching now, especially using these kits, and any, let's say, emphasis it may have on helping you meet your obligations to meet state standards in your instruction?
Well, of course, my students are on what we call the alternate assessment. They are getting access to the standards. My students still participate in the CTAE classes. So again, I can use these kits in support of the CTAE classes. Again, the community-based instruction, this is support for that. Independent skills, life skills, it's supporting all that. And most importantly, it supports their IEPs and their transition plans.
Earlier in our presentation, I think it was Paula had a slide that listed perhaps 7 or 8 different sources of funding. Can you tell us what you know about how your kits were funded?
Yeah, well, this was something I honestly had to go and ask my special education director about. And I think a lot of other counties in Georgia can agree with me that being a special education teacher, a lot of times we're told by, our administration, we've got this money to spend, you've got this allotment. I've been very lucky to have support staff here that allows me to make these purchases every year. I do know that last year, the kits that I bought were purchased through the ARP grant. And that was probably halfway through the school year. Typically, I do my purchase orders at the end of the school year. Orders are made over the summer for the next school year. But halfway through this school year, because this funding kind of trickled down, we were let known that there was money to be spent, so to speak. And we kind of had some mid-year purchases, which is when I ordered these kits.
Do you know if in other years your kits were funded by either IDEA or Perkins grants, or is that not something that is shared with us?
I know that, you know, a lot of my purchases have been through the IDEA money. I'm not sure of the other. Again, it's kind of one of those situations where, you know, I think individuals and schools would have to go to that special education director, especially after learning this information today, and say, okay, do we have funding available? What funding is out there for us to use?
So you're going to ask for more.
Oh yeah. My plan, and I've been given permission, is,
Good
you know,
girl.
every year I'm going to continue to purchase 1 or 2 kits a year and keep adding to my library here, because you know, I really do enjoy these kits. They're very easy to follow, they're easy to use. I love all the hands-on material. I was quite surprised when I got the housekeeping one. They called me to the front office to pick it up, and there was box after box after box after box, because it comes literally with everything from all the cleaning supplies to the mop bucket to the mops and the brooms and whatever. So, you know, these kits are very thorough, and they include everything that you would need to work with. And it's, you know, you don't feel like you're using fake or simulated, because you're not. You're using real hands-on stuff.
Erin Schutte, thank you for joining us today. We appreciate
Thank
all
you.
of your comments, and I'm hoping we have some more questions coming. Tanya or Alice or anyone, do you have any questions that you would like to ask Erin or Paula or Shelley?
Al, I have had a quick question really that I can go over. Someone has asked if we could describe very quickly what the assessments are, because we said assessments plural. And we do have 2 kinds of assessments. So I know what that question was about. We have a knowledge-based pre-post test assessment in our kits, but we also have our work performance benchmarks, which are a functional performance evaluation of how the students did when they were doing the tasks. And, you know, when Erin was talking about using those with an IEP and supports to show the activities and tasks the students could perform, those benchmarks are perfect to give you a really functional evaluation of what the students can do. So I'm glad we had that question to kind of clear up that we do have 2 kinds of assessments.
And thank you for your insight in that regard, Shelley, very much. So Erin, Shelley, Paula, thank you for your contributions to today's town hall meeting. I assume we are about to call it over. Is
Looks
there
like
anything else that you would want to say before we close this off?
Looks like Alice may have a question here. I just saw it pop up on the screen. So can
Oh, for
Shelley-
Erin. Okay.
Erin?
Yes, it was for Erin. When you submit requests for these materials from your district, do you have to provide background on the evidence-based curriculum components?
I have not had to provide the evidence, of course, you know, within my research. And I think, you know, I again, I'm lucky to have the supervisor that professionalism and my, you know, what I'm looking for and my expertise. And she knows that I'm looking at sometimes individual kids. She's looking or I'm looking at, you know, meeting the needs of all my students in some form or fashion. So she, you know, knows that I'm just not out there looking for some quick fix. I'm finding something that's backed up by evidence. And you know, what I did when I researched your programs is, you know, I requested some samples and I requested a brochure. I took that information to my special education director and shared it with her. And she thought it looked great, and I was allowed to make those purchases.
And Aaron and Al, if you don't mind me jumping in, that's such an important question right now in terms of overall funding, because we're seeing funding all over the place. Really look at that track record and evidence of what you have. And as Shelley mentioned on those funding overviews that she indicated, we've provided some of that, just a snapshot of that evidence as well. But there is so many endorsements that you all have. Shelley, I wouldn't even do it now. I wouldn't even do it credit, but you guys have all of the endorsements and things like that, that illustrates the track record that you have in delivering results for students. So I just, it was a great question for the group, because we see that not only with the recovery funds, but we're seeing it with Title I and Title IV and all of the Perkins money. As part of spending those dollars, folks, we have to ensure that the products and services that we're looking at do indeed have that evidence behind. So Aaron, I commend you for doing your homework and doing that research behind, so that you can take it to the people that are making those decisions to spend those dollars, but also making sure that we're spending those dollars wisely.
Well, this gives us, and it has given us, an overview of the federal funds, the way they flow to the states. We've seen how Georgia and how much money Georgia has been getting from the federal funds, both from the traditional funding sources and also from those that are related to the pandemic. And Shelley gave us some color on how Georgia's, let's say, requirements to eligibly teach with Education Associates materials would match the criteria for federal funding. And then Erin gave us, from her own experiences and her own knowledge about from within a Georgia school district, how she has decided to begin using Project Discovery and Achieve Life Skills kits and how it mixes in with her own curriculum. So ladies, thank you for your diligence. Thank you for your presentations. I appreciate everything. And it sounds like I've got another alarm going on here.
Well sounded.
I apologize for all
Just
of
be
that.
safe. Just be safe.
Thank you,
And this ends our
everyone.
program for today.
Thank you.
You bet. Thank you.